Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, the author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me today is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell Ray of Enfeeblement.
It's a pretty good one. It's
Yeah,
a
see,
good one.
I'm coming at this with thinking it sucks, but yeah, let's see what we've got to say.
Okay, Ray of Enfeeblement is a weird spell in that when you get it at third level, it's awful. This is like one of the worst spells you get when you get it. It gets substantially better the higher tier of play you get, though. The longer the game goes on, the better Ray of Enfeeblement is, with the caveat that you're not a warlock. So long as you're a wizard, Ray of Enfeeblement is a great tool to have in your back pocket, especially as a second level spell.
Actually, now that you mention it, now that I'm looking it over, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but let's dig a little deeper into that. Let's see, what does it do? It's a second level warlock or wizard spell, black beam of yada yada yada. All right, on a hit, it's a ranged spell attack. On a hit, the target deals only half damage with weapon attacks that use strength until the spell ends, and it is concentration spell up to a minute with a range of 60 feet. Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying now that I think about it a little bit more. But
so yeah, it
go
suffers. So Ray of Enfeeblement suffers in lower level encounters because often the difference between 6 and 3 damage is very little. Often when we're talking about going down and getting dropped to 0, something hitting you for 3 and 6 won't really matter when you only have 10 hit points total. Like the difference there often is going to feel small, especially if you've been slogging through things already. Oftentimes this isn't having a particularly large impact because people aren't getting hit 7 or 8 or 9 times. Whenever you're not fighting against monsters that you expect to make multi-attacks 3 times a turn, doing large quantities of damage, this doesn't multiply well with those monsters. A bandit is going to attack you with their short sword, and instead of doing a d6 plus 1, it's doing half of a d6 plus 1. That is underwhelming. That is certainly not worth a second level spell slot. Whenever you're into the tiers, though, where you're fighting against things like storm giants, whenever you're fighting against things that are multi-attacking you 4 different times with a greatsword that does 48 plus 7 as a base damage modifier, right? If that thing's hitting you twice, having that damage is hugely impactful, especially if you're having against someone that has resistance already. So if like your barbarian is facing off against this kind of creature, being able to Ray of Enfeeblement it quadruples their hit points functionally with their resistances. So you can just get huge swaths of damage taken. And you can create these neat little defensive situations and have a decent tool for navigating those kinds of encounters. There will definitely be situations, even in the upper tiers, where you'll never want to cast Ray of Enfeeblement ever. The fact that it's a second level spell that is scaling, meaning it gets better as the game goes on, because having things get better the larger the numbers get. You can always comfortably take the spell. Even you don't really ever want to take it early, but if you don't like any of the I got a new 5th level spell here, but I don't really care about any of these 5th level spells, pick up Ray of Enfeeblement. Grab it, put it in your back pocket, save it for later, and then your DM's gonna be like, and the Kraken comes out with 8 tentacles to attack the paladin, he's going to die, and you'd be like, actually, I'm going to Ray of Enfeeble that Kraken, and it's going to be doing half damage, which is majorly important because it's the difference between 250 damage and 125 damage, and that is the difference between life and death. So that is where the spell certainly shines brightest, and where I would recommend trying to prepare it for and have it at the ready for.
Yeah, well, that's why I have you here, and I don't do these videos myself.
Fair. It's all so. Spells in 5e, generally speaking, tend to be best when you get them. So normally, because most things do a static number of dice, either damage or inflict a condition, that doesn't normally scale particularly well in the late game. Conditions kind of do. Things being frightened, they'll always be frightened. The thing that makes frightened and conditions worse as the game goes on is legendary resistance starts to become more common. You start to have things that just auto pass 3 saves when they need to. Whereas things that just simply have things that give resistance to damage types, things that give ways around resistance, become more important the more things either have those resistances or have those damage types, or the more kinds of things you can affect numerically with them. This is honestly just a perfect example of that. This is just a spell that is really good whenever you're specifically dealing with large quantities of dice. The more dice there are, meaning the later in the game you are, the better it is. It's the kind of reason that this is a kind of spell that I wish there were more of, in that it's a second level spell that you don't always want to cast at third level, but you do always, not always, but frequently want to cast at higher levels. It makes you think about your second level spell slots in the future, which I think is useful. I think it's neat to have things in your toolbox as a wizard that you can pull into. Now, notice I keep saying wizard and not warlock. It's sad times for warlocks as usual.
Okay, this is what I was going to ask you. Yes, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So warlocks, they have pact magic, which means they get like 3 spell slots for their entire life, until they get the upper level 6th, 7th, and 8th spells and 9th spells. Then they get 1 of each of those. You don't ever want to spend a 5th level spell slot on this. You don't. It's not worth a 5th level spell slot. This is definitely worth a 2nd level spell slot. And if you have to spend your 5th level warlock spell slot on this, you are sad. On top of that, it eats your concentration. Warlocks, while wizards can care about their concentration, especially if you're doing like conjuration magic and stuff, which is probably more broken than this and probably what you want to be doing anyway. You don't want to have to break that for Ray of Enfeeblement. You don't want to take your Hex away for Ray of Enfeeblement. You don't want to take your Summon Shadow Spawn away for Ray of Enfeeblement. You also won't. Warlocks infamously will want the highest level spell they can cast all the time. So when you get to the 3rd level, it's bad. And then whenever you get to 5th level, you'll immediately replace it for whatever 3rd level spell slot is better than all your 2nd level spells. Or 3rd level spells better than all your 2nd level spells. You'll never ever cast this in the Warlock class because you could only ever cast it as like a 5th level spell slot. And that sucks because Pact Magic is a poorly designed feature that Warlocks will suffer for eternally. So yeah, we can be Warlocks a little bit more here. I always am the pity Warlock and pity Ranger corner, but this is a spell that you can take on a wizard and be happy with, and you will probably never want this on a Warlock because you'll spend an action and your concentration to maybe reduce 15 damage in an encounter if you're really lucky, and that is definitely not worth a spell slot.
Let's see. Any other questions I got about this spell?
It's honestly, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, are there any other spells you'd compare it to that are better or worse?
Oh, fair. Ray of Enfeeblement compares pretty well to things like Ray of Sickness. Things that give poisoned effects like Cloud Kill tend to be around where Ray of Enfeeblement is. You're going to find effects that impose disadvantage on attack rolls, are mitigating damage in a lot of ways. If they're taking things that would hit and making them misses, you've mitigated all of the damage, where this is always only mitigating half the damage. And this also only says strength. So that is going to be a thing you can consider. If you do want to pick up Ray of Enfeeblement, this will be good at specifically handling one thing and for a 2nd level slot. There will be spells like Cloud Kill at higher level. There will be spells, even like the removal of creatures is a way to mitigate the damage. So Banishment and Polymorph both are going to solve this problem, but they do cost higher level slots. So you can conceivably balance it out and say, this is only a 2nd level slot. This is always going to reduce the damage this thing is dealing. If I'm never removing this either burns legendary resistance. I'm sorry, it gets around legendary resistance because it just it hits them, and then they can choose to make the save at the end of their turn. You're always getting at least 1 round of this should you hit, which is a big game, notably. But otherwise, you're probably going to want to look towards things that don't have legendary resistance. You're going to want to look towards the higher level options if you really need to. But if you don't have the higher level spell slots to use, Ray of Enfeeblement is going to fall back on. Anything that mitigates damage by removing monsters, by imposing disadvantage on hits, that's kind of where this spell stands. I think another one that's kind of close to it is Mirror Image, in that you can block things for yourself by having all duplicates that just soak damage. Even things like False Life that just give temporary hit points. It does reduce the damage you take by giving you extra hit points. At the end of the day, though, this specifically neuters a monster, and specifically neutering a monster can be done in a whole suite of ways, and they are done better certainly at higher levels. But this one is just so cheap; it's nice to have, and you can be comfy in saying, all right, even if I use my last 4th level slot, I still have something to deal with the Aboleth. I still have something that can deal with the Hill Giant. You have it in your back pocket. You don't need to worry about it. You have it on lock. You're comfortable there. That's what the spell does. It's like a cup of hot cocoa. The spell, Ray of Enfeeblement.
Sure. All right, you had me until the cup of hot cocoa.
Yeah, sure. It's comfy. It's warm. It's fuzzy. You're happy to have it.
There you go. Okay.
The cocoa.
All right. Well, you know what? Congratulations, Sam. You've just converted me. I'm now a fan of Ray of Enfeeblement.
Yeah, this isn't going to change anyone's lives, but it's fine.
You just changed mine.
Oh, thanks, Bob. I'm so glad I can change your life like this. That's what I'm here for.
Okay, so do you have any final thoughts on Ray of Enfeeblement?
Yeah. If you're going to take Ray of Enfeeblement, if you like the sound of it, just take it after 3rd level. Like, don't take it at 3rd level because it's pretty bad there. Mitigating 10 damage really sucks. But if you want to like open up and diverse toolbox if you want more things to do to interact with the world, and you want to be able to use your lower level slots at higher level for like more impactful things. Ray of Enfeeblement's that. It's a great little tool to have in your back pocket, a great tool to add to the toolbox that you'll be happy that you picked up whenever you finished out your 4th level spells on more important things. It's definitely
that's where the trap I fell into. I was just looking at it like when you can first get it. I didn't think ahead to using it in the future at higher levels.
That's a fair trap to fall into.
All right. Well, that's Ray of Enfeeblement, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, our full review of the spell, and other fun things.